Hi everybody at Meetup, I'm Jeani Murray, I'm the State Director for Iowans for Dean. Just wanted to thank you for joining us tonight and coming to the Meetup. We appreciate all your help. This is exactly what it's going to be like on caucus night. Pitch black, freezing cold, windy, snow on the ground, and you're going to help us turn out Iowans to come caucus for Howard Dean. Whew! You got to close this because it gets really windy. This is our Iowans for Dean main headquarters here in Des Moines. So I'm going to give you a quick little tour and invite you all to join us and show what all your hard work is done. This is our high school night, so we have some high school volunteers in here. This is our phone bank room, and they have a little message for you guys tonight.
Caucus for Change, January 19th.
Hi guys, this is our scheduling and advance operation. In our office, they're all kind of crammed into one little room. One person I want to point out is Franny Starkey, who was one of our longest serving employees here in Iowa. Franny's back there. You can also see our JJ map of where all our seats were that you guys purchased for us. Thanks so much. Hi everybody, this is what we affectionately call the Bat Cave. It's where all of our field staff are based out of the Des Moines headquarters. We obviously have field staff all around the state. These are some of our really hardworking, diligent people who are point of contact people. This is our communications office.
Can't wait to see you in January. I can't wait.
See you
It's going to be great. Can't wait to see you all.
Behind you, man. What is that breaking?
It's the how many are you bringing aboard? As we see, 50 states, all with numbers, adding up to 5,000.
Who's got the record now?
Who's got the record at the moment is, well, Minnesota promised a lot, but have yet to deliver. So we're hopeful.
Oh.
Come on. It'll be fun.
This is obviously our crew who are organizing all of you guys coming out to Iowa. 5,000 strong, the most volunteers ever to come out and help on a caucus. So this is the crew that you guys will be seeing a lot of. This is Ken Sanguin, who's directing the effort right here. Woo!
This site is we're going to have training for the Iowa caucus for Iowans who want to learn about it. There'll be video showing them exactly what they're going to do with the caucus so they're not scared of it and they have a good time and can help Dean win. We're going to have, places for people to come in, log in, find out how they're going to get to Iowa. There's going to be a ride board so people can organize trips from all over the country to come into Iowa. It's going to be awesome.
Still walking, come on.
Where are we going to?
We'll go into the field ops, but I need to warn them first.
Hello, Meetup. What's up, Meetup?
Hi, Meetup.
Welcome to Anything to say to the 5,000 folks on in? Thank you for your letters. Yeah.
Aaron, you want to tell them what this is?
Well, yeah, we actually have an organizer who's from Notre Dame who insisted on the caucus like a champion thing, so we stole it from him.
Notre Dame has the Play Like a Champion Today sign that everybody hits.
Aaron, can you come
What is this
explain-
thing?
Can you come explain this?
Campaigns are, about nothing if not long hours, and from time to time lots of frustration. So we've installed a healthful stress relief. So we have, ecologically sound punching bag. We have another one over here in the IT department, which has weather stripping on it, so it gives it a nicer weight.
The IT department, this is where the magic happens. We're not really sure what all those wires are over there. You'll see those in a minute, but we just don't let anybody touch them except for these three guys. Guys have anything to say to Meetup?
Hey, Meetup.
Hi, Meetup.
Hey. Good job. Keep bringing them in.
They don't do a lot of human interaction.
Yeah, we hardly ever
They don't let us see the outside world.
This is one of the most important people here in Iowa, Tanner Brooks. He's my assistant here.
Glad you guys could make it into the office. Yeah, good to see you. Just thanks for everybody doing what you can. We're all trying really hard here for you guys out there too.
This is our Deputy State Director, Matt Paul.
Hey guys.
This is our Meetup video.
Do you have anything to say to Meetup? National Meetup?
Thanks for what you guys are doing. It's great.
Now that you've seen the tour of the Iowans for Dean office, I just wanted to thank everybody for all your help that you've been doing to help the campaign here and nationally. The Adopt an Iowans letter that you guys started in June has made a huge difference. Every letter that you send here to the thousands of Iowans that have received them, it's made a big, big difference. We have a number of people who you have corresponded with and made friendships with, and Iowans are looking forward to meeting you guys when you come out. We really, really appreciate all of your help and can't thank you enough. You guys are going to make the difference for this campaign. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Francisco Castillo and I'm the State Director for Howard Dean's campaign in New Mexico. Since your letter writing efforts have been so successful in Iowa and New Hampshire, I'd like for you to also reach out to our New Mexican voters. Our caucus is February 3rd, and we also have early voting by absentee ballot by mail through January 20th. We're encouraging our New Mexican voters to fill out one of these early ballot by mail requests and vote during that 2-week period through January 20th. Together we can win New Mexico and take our country back. Viva Dean.
Good evening, and thanks for coming to another Dean Meetup. First, I want to thank you all for what you've done. Last January, our campaign was an asterisk in the polls. We had $127,000 in the bank, 427 supporters on Meetup, and a staff small enough to fit into a single room. In the 12 months that followed, you shattered fundraising records, you defied expectations, and you laid the groundwork for a 50-state organization strong enough to beat George Bush. In October, you wrote 2,500 letters to Al and Tipper Gore asking for their support, and it worked. Because of the action you took, we received an extraordinary endorsement from the Vice President last month, and those letters made a difference in his decision. You proved once again that individual people can make a difference in our democracy and in our country. You've written over 100,000 letters in all, letters to voters in Iowa and New Hampshire and to elected officials all over the country. And I've spoken to so many people who received those letters. They told me how valuable those letters were in influencing their decision to support us. You've turned this into something more than just a campaign for the White House. Now, we've started a movement to change America. All year long, you've been building it, writing letters, volunteering, knocking on doors, talking about the kind of country that we can have when we come together in common purpose. This month, the first votes of the 2004 presidential election will be cast. On January 19th, the Iowa caucuses will take place, and the New Hampshire primary will follow on January 27th. And on February 3rd, the day before our next meetup, votes will be cast in South Carolina, Arizona, Oklahoma, New Mexico, Delaware, Missouri, North Dakota. Please keep writing those letters, talking to others, and committing yourself to participate in your state's primary or caucus. Pay special attention to those states that have early voting, and Arizona is one of them. January 19th is the day it starts. If you're in one of those early states, it's very important that you get everyone you know to join you on your primary day and before when early voting starts, because those are votes in the bank. I hope you'll even consider going to volunteer in those states if you're not in one of them. We're going to need thousands and thousands of people on the ground in order to win and get the vote out. We can only take back our country when all of us get out and vote. That's how we're going to put our government back in the hands of ordinary people again. Change is something that's coming to us in America. Our campaign now has over 500,000 supporters, but there are millions more who share our values. Americans who are ready to build a future in which our politics and our media and our economy and our lives are not controlled by the decisions of a few powerful interests. Millions of us are ready to build a future in which we value one another as human beings again, and our government doesn't try to divide us against one another, but recognizes that we're all in this together. We need to reach out to them and to others and get them to join. What's at stake in this election is the kind of country we're going to have, not just for the next 4 years, but for the next 50 years. It's incredible what you've already done so far to shape the course of the election. Just as 200 years ago, the people who founded this country shaped a new era of government, it's now in our hands. As Thomas Paine said then, and we still understand today, the sun never shined on a cause of greater worth.
It's great to be back in Iowa. And isn't it great to have Al Gore back in Iowa? You know, I was telling the vice presidents, we came in on the plane, I said, you know, these people have heard my stump speech 35 times. They don't want to hear mine, they want to hear yours. No. So you... Let me thank all of you who have been with us for so long and worked so hard. We have just about exactly 41 days, if I'm not mistaken, until the caucus night, and we got a long way to go. But as we were talking about last night, we have something like 515,000 people signed up, and today we have 515,001. You know this campaign, what this campaign's about. It's about health insurance. It's about jobs in America again. It's about an educational system that work for all our kids. But it's also about what kind of a country we're going to have. It's about whether or not we're going to regain our place after 3 years of George W. Bush as the moral leader of the world as well as the military leader of the world. It's about whether we're going to invest in America or whether we're going to continue to send jobs offshore. It's about whether we're going to invest in schools and roads and bridges and broadband, telecommunications, and renewable energy, or whether we're going to give tax breaks to the wealthiest people in the United States of America. And mostly, it's about whether in Iowa our biggest export is going to be our children. This president has cut Pell Grants for kids in order to finance tax cuts for Ken Lay and the boys who ran Enron. This president has cut fire and police protection, refused to fund special education, refused to fund No Child Left Behind, all to give tax cuts to Ken Lay and the boys who are writing them all those $2,000 checks. We can do better than that in this country. That's not what this country is about. You know, there's a lot of talk about the president's tax cut. People say, oh, Howard Dean wants to get rid of all those tax cuts, those wonderful tax cuts. You see that right-wing group that George Bush had on television talking about the Democrats wanting to get rid of, or actually he was talking about me specifically, which I took that as a great compliment. To have the right wing after you is a good thing. He said that we wanted to take away middle-class tax cuts. I'll tell you what we want to do. 1% of the people in this country got a $26,000 tax cut. 60% of the people in this country got a $304 tax cut. Tell me if your property taxes have gone up $304 in the last 3 years. Tell me if your college tuition, your kids' college tuition, your grandchildren's college tuition has gone up more than $304 in the last 3 years. Tell me if your health care premiums have gone up more than $304 in the last... This president never gave middle-class people a tax cut. This president gave the middle-class people in this country the largest tax increase in the history of the United States of America, and we aim to fix that. But what this campaign is really about is what kind of an America we're going to have. When I first came to Iowa in February of 2002, I sat with about 20 Iowans in the back room of a small cafe, and they basically told me in their Iowa way, without pounding on the table or pointing fingers at anybody, they told me that they didn't feel valued by their employers anymore, because their employers were big American corporations that weren't really American anymore. They would move their jobs somewhere else, and they would leave people behind who had been working for them for 20 years. They felt that their employers didn't trust them, and they didn't trust their employers. In this country, we've seen this happen before. It happened when William McKinley was president. It happened when Herbert Hoover was president. And it's happened under George W. Bush, where the balance of our country is thrown off, that we're not all in it together anymore, that economic interests have trumped political interests, and political interests are the only chance that we have to influence our government. I think the president doesn't understand, because he's giving permission to these corporations to behave like this. There's nothing wrong with corporations or right with corporations. They're big, amoral folks who look at the bottom line. That's their job. But we are not meant to be cogs in big corporations. We're meant to be human beings who connect to each other with spirituality. And if you want jobs in America, we had better start to invest in small businesses, which create 70% of all our jobs, and they don't move their jobs offshore. When I was 21 years old, it was the end of the civil rights movement. and this country had paid a big price. Martin Luther King had been killed. Bobby Kennedy was dead. A lot of other people died, including 4 little girls in a Birmingham church, to stand up for the idea that we were all equal under the law, that we were all in it together, that if one of us was left behind, then the country couldn't be as good as it should be or as strong as it should be. This president ran as a uniter, not a divider. There wasn't much truth in that one either. He used the word quota 5 or 6 times to talk about the University of Michigan Affirmative Action Program. Now, not only did the most conservative Supreme Court, since the Dred Scott decision, disagree with him on that one, but the word quota, as every politician and every pollster in America knows, is a race-coded word which is deliberately designed to appeal to people's fears of losing their places in university or their jobs to a member of a community of color. In other words, the president played the race card, and that alone entitles him to a one-way bus ticket back to Crawford, Texas. I am tired of being divided by race in this country. I am tired of being divided by gender in this country. I am tired of being divided by income, by religion, by sexual orientation. We are all in this together. And when the right wing says race, we're going to say jobs. When they say gay marriage, we're going to say health insurance. And when they say abortion rights, we're going to say, or guns, or whatever they're going to say. They got something now about guns. When they talk about guns, we're going to say education. We are, in this campaign, are going to talk about the things that unite us, that everybody, black and white and brown, needs. We're not going to, for a moment, back off on what we believe about human rights, but we are going to look at what we all have in common. I just got back from South Carolina and Virginia with Jesse Jackson Jr. and Bobby Scott, who's a congressman from Norfolk. What we talk about in the South is what we're going to talk about in Iowa and New Hampshire and Oklahoma and Arizona and everywhere we go. It is time to stop the divisions fomented by the right wing of the Republican Party and talk about what Americans need together. Because this president has been the president of big corporations and 1% of us, and how about a president who's going to start to appeal to the very best in us and stop appealing to the worst in us? I want to introduce somebody who does appeal to the best of us. A man who got 500,000 more votes than the occupant of the White House. Thanks to you. A man who served his country honorably overseas, a man who served honorably in the United States Congress and the United States Senate, a man... It's the two-way campaign, Mr. Vice President. You know, they get to say stuff like this and we have to respond. Thank you. A man who served this country well in 8 years of the vice presidency, a man who still is the moral leader of this country, the Vice President of the United States, Al Gore. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It is great to be back in Iowa. I love Iowa. Thank you. Thank you for the warmth and enthusiasm. And it's great to be here because today I endorse Howard Dean to be the next president of the United States of America. I want to spend just a few minutes telling you why I've reached this decision and how I reached this decision. I'm just one person and I have one vote. I'm blessed with a lot of friends, and I want to do everything I can to convince my friends and anybody that is interested in what I have to say about this race that they ought to be for Howard. And you know, when I made a decision some time back that I would not be a candidate myself, I said in that statement that I would make an endorsement of one of the candidates before the primaries and before the Iowa caucuses. And at that point, I really had no idea which of the candidates that I would endorse, because I wanted to listen and watch and kind of absorb what campaigns had to say. And I've done that. And there are a lot of great candidates on the Democratic side in this race, and we have a great field out there. We really do. And the other side tries to run down all of them. You know, that's what they do. But I'm not going to say a negative word about any of the other candidates on the Democratic side. And I think we ought to observe an 11th commandment on the Democratic side of the ledger. Let's just stop as much of this criticism among the candidates on our side as we can, because I don't think the stakes have ever been as high in our lifetimes as they are in 2004. You know that. Sometimes we Democrats get to enjoying the fight internally so much that we lose focus a little bit on what the real objective is, and that is to win the general election and to provide the kind of leadership that can help our country become even greater and can help our people reach their dreams and their potential. And if I can add anything in what I say today in endorsing Howard Dean, I hope it would be an effort to convince all of those in Iowa and around this country who are supporting any of the Democratic candidates, who are just kind of sitting back and still waiting, to keep the focus on that larger objective. And I have come to the conclusion that among all of the campaigns, Howard Dean and you have managed to do a better job of igniting enthusiasm at the grassroots all across the United States of America, and that's what we need to rebuild the Democratic Party and to rebuild America and to take back the White House and to put our country on the right road again. And I think from my point of view, there are some reasons why Howard Dean has been as successful as he has been in connecting with people at the grassroots level and inspiring so much enthusiasm. I think people realize that sometimes he kind of speaks off the cuff, you know, but they realize also that that is a result of the fact that he speaks from the heart and he doesn't hold back and he tries to say and do what's right for this country. And I like that. And let me talk a minute about experience. At the time when Howard Dean left the governor's office in his state, he had served for almost 12 years, at that point longer than any other Democratic governor in the United States of America. During that time, he also served as chairman of the National Governors Association, representing and speaking for Democratic and Republican governors in all 50 states. After that fact, he was asked by his peers among the Democratic governors to return to a position of leadership, to be the chairman of the Democratic Governors Association. And I worked with him extensively when he was in both of those roles. He learned during that time and during those long, almost 12 years as governor, working with his colleagues around the nation, what the issues are at the national level and how they affect the average folks in this country. And during his campaign, as he's traveled across Iowa and across America, he's demonstrated the fact that he has that connection and he does understand those issues. Now, let me talk for a minute about foreign policy and national security policy. I've spent a lot of my life and career dealing with these issues. And back some years ago, I guess maybe 11 years ago now, when the first Persian Gulf War came along, I supported that because Saddam Hussein had invaded his neighboring country and all of the nations in the region were allied with us, and there was an international coalition, and it was based on the rule of law and the United Nations resolution, and all the ducks were in a row, and the question was, should we be willing to use force or not? And in that situation, I said, yes, of course. Let's do what we have to do. And I supported that war at a time when a lot of people in my party did not. Well, some were then surprised the next time the situation evolved. Well, you know, they saw a war over there, and next time there's another war proposed over there. Well, you were for the first one, aren't you going to be for this? No, and here's the difference. Because this time, Saddam Hussein, who is a bad guy and we're well rid of him, but this time he did not invade another country. This time, the other nations in the region were not allied with us. This time, our international allies were not with us. They were opposed to us. This time, there was not a United Nations resolution. This time, there was not the kind of justification to send American troops over into a situation, particularly when the leaders of our nation in the Bush-Cheney White House managed somehow to give the false impression to the American people that Saddam Hussein was responsible for the attack on 9/11. And the truth is that he was not. That was Osama bin Laden, and that's not the same individual as Saddam Hussein. Now, so I looked at this situation and I said, hey, I was in the United States Army in Vietnam. This looks a little bit to me like a quagmire, a potential for a quagmire over there. And so I opposed it and spoke out against it. And I waited and listened. I waited and listened to what all of the candidates in my party had to say and propose about this. Now, I realize it's only one of the issues, but my friends, this nation has never, in our 2 centuries and more, made a worse foreign policy mistake than George W. Bush made in putting our troops into that quagmire in Iraq. It was a horrible judgment, misjudgment. And therefore, it is not a minor matter to me that the only major candidate for the nomination of my party that had the good judgment, experience, and good sense to feel and see and articulate the right choice was Howard Dean. I think that matters. One of the things you're looking for in a president of the United States is judgment and the courage and the ability to cut through all the confusion and say, wait a minute, what is this that they're proposing? And then to say, if the emperor has no clothes, say the emperor has no clothes. So that made a deep impression on me. And you, with your enthusiasm, have made a deep impression on me. And I find this energy all over the United States of America, where there are people at the grassroots who hear all the, the pundits and the experts and the establishment, and they'll say, well, Howard Dean, Well, I do know. I do know. And it just, when I hear people who made the wrong judgment about getting us into this quagmire over there in Iraq stand up and say, well, his position on the war proves that he doesn't have the understanding of foreign policy, I think, well, now they're turning things upside down on that. He's the one that did have the good judgment and the good sense. And when I hear people say, oh, that's way out on the left, I know they have not talked to the people in his state, so many of whom criticized him really for being too conservative when he was governor of his state, and they haven't talked to his fellow governors who know about his leadership among the governors of this nation. So let me conclude by saying that for all of those reasons, I decided that I wanted to speak up and speak out, and I hope that somehow in some way those of us who are participating in the choice of a Democratic nominee will indeed find a way to close ranks as soon as we can behind a nominee. I've given you my recommendation for who that ought to be. If somebody hearing my voice is working hard for some other candidate, all right, fine, I respect that. I respect all of these candidates and their supporters, but try in all the campaigns to conduct ourselves, in a way that does not do the Republicans' work for them in between now and when we select a nominee. The stakes are too high. Too much is on the line. And finally, it is my most fervent hope that we can remake the Democratic Party in order to take that enthusiasm that you have ignited, Howard, among so many of your supporters around this nation, and take that to other Americans, so many of whom at this stage of the campaign are undecided and don't know what they're going to do next year, and explain to them, person to person, why we are enthusiastic about changing our country. Democracy is a team sport. We need to bring people together, and we need to be passionate about the work ahead. There are some in the Democratic Party who I hear from time to time say, oh, there's just no way that we can win in 2004. I hear that. They don't know. They don't know. But if they keep saying that, they're going to convince themselves of it. I'm here because I believe that this Howard Dean campaign offers America the best chance to prove the cynics and the pessimists wrong and to lift up what's best in America and reclaim our future. And that's why I'm here to endorse Howard Dean as the next president. Thank you.
We are an extraordinary grassroots campaign. We are built from mouse pads, shoe leather, and hope. And like the founders of the Republic, we seek change. You have the power to restore our nation to fiscal sanity and bring jobs back to our people. You have the power to fulfill Harry Truman's pledge of health care for all Americans. You have the power to give us foreign policy consistent with American values again. You have the power to take our country back. You have the power. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We're going to take our country back. Thank you very much.
I think he really wants to bring back the values that we had as kids.
And Howard has a great family. I remember when I first went out to their house on Long Island, first time I ever met them, and they were just the most welcoming people in the world. It was like, you're Howard's friend, you must be wonderful.
Our family was a close family. It was sort of came in two sets. It was Howard and Charlie, and then it was my brother and Billy and I.
Howard was very good with his younger brothers and with all their friends. He always had great ideas of what to do. He had a good imagination.
Howard was not your ordinary older brother. He was someone who didn't just help us out when we were having a scrape with another kid in the neighborhood. He was a guy that really took a lot of interest in our own lives.
He often came to my defense, which was great, especially since I'm the youngest and I could have used it.
We were outdoors all the time because we grew up in a place, Eastern Long Island, that didn't have any television. It had one channel, Channel 8 from New Haven, which was so fuzzy it was like being in a snowstorm.
And we used to talk a lot about politics at the dinner table.
Dad was actually quite a conservative political person.
My husband was pretty strong-minded, and he really was conservative. And Howard was going in the other direction when he was 18 and 19.
What I liked about the way Howard thought about things was that he was an independent thinker, even back then. I first met Howard Dean in September of 1967.
It was certainly the most important year that I was in college, but it may have been one of the most important years I spent in my life.
The war in Vietnam was going very badly. In early '68, Martin Luther King was assassinated. In June of '68, Bobby Kennedy was assassinated. So we were all searching for where we were headed as a country, and it was a very trying time.
I distrusted, interestingly enough, politicians at the time because I thought they were wedded to ideas but not human beings. And so I started tutoring my freshman year. And then ultimately I went on and did some student teaching in one of the New Haven middle schools, which was a great experience because I'm sure I'm the only presidential candidate that actually has had to stand for 5 hours without being able to go to the bathroom. My brother Charlie was very idealistic and very hard-nosed. He was very stubborn, which I think came from being 16 months younger than the older person, which was me. So we had plenty of disagreements. But as he grew older, the thing that I admired about him the most is that he believed it wasn't just important to talk about doing the right thing, that he actually wanted to do something about it, and he did.
He went to Laos and was taking a tour down the Mekong River with a guide, and he was captured by the insurgency group, the Pathet Lao.
He was held for 3 or 4 months in a village, and we knew where he was. We just couldn't get him.
When we discovered that he was missing, my father went first, and then my mother went later to see what they could do about getting him released.
He was later taken up to a town in Laos, and on his way to that town, he was killed.
It was devastating for the whole family. A loss like that is awful for the siblings, and it's worse for the parents.
We never did discuss it as a family because my husband would get very upset. So I think the 3 boys talked about it with each other, and I think Howard really helped the 2 younger ones get through with it.
You have to decide that you're going to move on. You're going to learn the things that you can learn from your loved one's life and take those gifts that that person has given you and then use those gifts.
After what happened to Charlie, Howard made a decision to become a doctor.
Howard was working on Wall Street, and he was very good at it. He's smart.
I wanted to get back into a life where I thought I was contributing something to other people.
The people on Wall Street wanted him to become more of an analyst and maybe a fund manager at some point. Meanwhile, he was sneaking up to Columbia at night and taking all the pre-med courses like biochemistry and all those things that he hadn't taken at Yale.
He wanted to help as many people as possible. He chose a field like family medicine, which allows him access to a very broad part of the population. It includes treating children, treating adults, treating elderly, treating pregnant women and delivering babies. It's a field that you don't see many people going into.
And he graduated in 3 years. And he met Judy there, which was nice.
The first time I really noticed her, I said to my friend, that girl's adorable. And so I promised myself that if she was in the library after I'd admired her from afar for a while, if she was in the library on a certain night, I was going to ask her out.
One Friday night I was in the library, and I had just been thinking that I wasn't meeting a lot of people at medical school, and I thought to myself, well, the next time someone asks me to do something at medical school, I will.
So I walked in, she was sitting in the library, and I said, would you like to come to dinner? And she said yes. That's how it started.
They seem to, go out together or see each other a lot. And I guess they fell in love.
They were a very special couple. I think everybody in the class felt that they were ideal for each other.
We come from such different families. I come from this waspy family that's 300 years in America. She comes from a family where her grandmother came over at age 17, escaping one of the pogroms in Russia. And yet our values are the same. We're very, very family oriented.
And he's very, very energetic. He likes to get things done, so he'll come in and I'll sort of have a list of things that are going wrong, like the sink's leaking or something like that. He'll fix all that. And one morning I looked out the window about 6:30 in the morning, and he was supposed to be on a flight to Iowa in about half an hour. I looked out the window, he was mowing the lawn in his suit, just so it would get done before he left.
And they work very well as a team, and I had to laugh when I heard that story because I could just see it happening.
We shared a practice in this office for a few years, and we shared patients, and the patients adored him.
Once he became a doctor and he got settled in Vermont and he got married, I think the instinct of the rest of this family was to think, great, he's on his way to the rest of his life. And then this little thing came up about running for the legislature.
Medicine and politics are two branches of the same thing. You go into medicine to make people's lives better. And I've always been really interested in changing the world, making it a better place. But the question is how you do that. And there are two ways to do it. One, you can do it one life at a time. That is, you're a good parent, you work hard at it, you're in a helping profession like being a physician or being a teacher. Or you can do what I do. You try to achieve social change of the kind we did in Vermont.
Well, he could do everything he wanted. He could practice medicine, he could do the legislature, and he could look out for the kids. And he did that right through the time he was lieutenant governor. It was a perfect life for him.
One of the speeches he was giving one time when his kids were little, Anne obviously wanted to be close to him. So he's up in front addressing a joint House and Senate meeting, and his little daughter is sitting underneath the podium coloring. That's Howard Dean.
I was doing a physical on a patient. The phone rang at about 8:10 in the morning, and the nurse knocked on the door and said, you have the governor's office on the line. This was one of the governor's aides, and he said, I'm sorry to have to inform you that the governor's died. I went back and finished the physical, knowing that that was the last patient I was going to see, maybe ever.
I know that he came home the next weekend, and I guess he and his father talked a lot about things like that. And then he went back to Vermont, and he was the governor.
Howard became governor when the state of Vermont and once again the country were in a terrible deficit situation.
He was immediately tested by fire. I mean, what he inherited was a fiscal nightmare.
He just does not see any obstacle as being too great to overcome.
And instead of saying, let's raise a lot of taxes, let's cut a lot of human service, let's hurt people, he set about a program to balance the state budget while maintaining vital services to people that needed them. It made all the difference in the world.
And it was his leadership that got Vermont from a record deficit to a record surplus, and he did that in 2 or 3 years.
And it's totally because of Howard Dean.
One of the things I'm most proud of in Vermont is that in 4 areas I left the state in a better place than I found it. Tons of undeveloped land forever, kids with health insurance and early intervention to keep prisons down, and a fiscal stability that has lasted us through this horrible recession without having to cut health care and education.
I think he wants to be president because he really wants to help people.
He understands that he can make a big difference in a lot of big ways.
He's very direct. He's very honest.
If he said he was going to do something, he would do it.
The guy works harder, faster, and longer than just about anybody else around.
I think he really believes that he can make a difference.
He just treats every individual with respect.
And it comes back to his core values are so clear. He knows what he wants, he knows where he wants to go, and he inspires people to go with him.
And I ask all Americans, regardless of party, to meet with me across this nation, to come together in common cause, to forge a new American century. Help us in the quest for return to greatness and return high moral purpose to the United States of America. You have the power to reclaim our nation's destiny. You have the power to rid Washington of the politics of money. You have the power to make right just as important as might. You have the power to give America a reason to vote again. And you have the power to take the White House back in 2004. You have the power to take this country back.
Right now, a few people give a lot of money. If a lot of people give a little bit of money, we'll have as much power, if not more power in Washington. But we have to convince the common person to do that.
It does empower the voters. It puts us in a position where what we say matters, not what the corporations matters. We have more of a say, I feel, this way.
The small contributions, takes the lobbyist out of the picture, and then it's the small guy that dictates the agenda and not the lobbyist.
The special thing that's happening with Howard Dean's campaign, with the way that he's collecting money from large numbers of small contributors, is really going to be make a difference.
The president has $200 million. The only way we can equalize that is to go out and get more people to give like 100 or 200 and equal that. And I think that gives you more power because there's strength in numbers.
If I'm giving part of my money to make this happen, I'm more interested in what the outcome might be.
We can fight corporate interests, and we can have our interests represented by donating $25. Even once during this whole presidential campaign, if everyone donates just $25, gets their friends to donate $25, it's going to make a difference.
I've never given before. I mean, this is the first campaign I've contributed actual money.
But for some reason, I've been a little more interested in this campaign enough to it's the first time I've actually donated.
If you have some extra money, then you got to throw it towards the people who you think can make a change.
And if you do the math, if we can get 2 million people to give $100, we're right there competitive with Mr. Bush.
You have the power to take back the Democratic Party. You have the power to take our country back. And you have the power to take the White House back in 2004. And that is exactly what we're going to be doing. You have that power. You have the power.
He took classes at night to get into medical school, volunteered in an emergency room in the South Bronx, and with his wife Judy, Howard Dean became a family doctor, hoping to make a difference one life at a time. He became governor under the worst of circumstances and earned a reputation as a maverick and independent by turning a deficit into a surplus, creating jobs, raising the minimum wage twice, and balancing budgets 11 years in a row. And while Washington talked, Howard Dean provided health care coverage for nearly every child in his state and a prescription drug benefit for seniors. Now he's running for president to repeal the Bush tax cuts, restore a foreign policy that reflects American values, and break the special interest gridlock to provide health insurance for every American.
We can stop the special interests, but not without your help. I'm Howard Dean, and I approve this ad because the truth is, the power to change this country is in your hands, not mine.
Take one vial, one canister, one crate. He misled the nation about weapons of mass destruction, and we went to war when we shouldn't have. Howard Dean is committed to fighting terrorism and protecting our national security. But Howard Dean opposed the war in Iraq from the beginning. He believes it's time we had a foreign policy consistent with American values. And it's time to restore the dignity and respect our country deserves around the world.
I'm Howard Dean, and I approve this message because our party and our country need new leadership.
Something different's happening.
The biggest lie that gets said at election time is that if you elect me, I'm going to solve all your problems.
Hundreds of thousands are joining together to take our country back from corporate special interests.
The truth is that the power to change this country is in your hands, not mine.
We need jobs in America. Stand up for health insurance for every single American.
By casting your vote, you can change America.
I'm Howard Dean, and I approve this message because it's time to take our country back.
George Bush. His economic policies created the largest deficit in our country's history. Now he's hiding behind negative ads that falsely attack Howard Dean. The truth? Howard Dean balanced budgets 11 years in a row. He's a fiscal conservative who cut state income taxes twice, raised the minimum wage, and provided health care coverage for nearly every child in his state.
I'm Howard Dean, and I approve this message because they're not trying to stop me, they're trying to stop you.
Los valores más importantes de la comunidad hispana son familia, niños, educación y trabajo. Hola, soy Howard Dean y aprobé este mensaje. Como gobernador, creé miles de nuevos empleos, proveemos el seguro médico para casi todos los niños y jóvenes y un sistema de educación de primera clase. Los mismos valores de la comunidad hispana son los valores de Howard Dean.